Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Under the Hood. Today we're joined by our resident, Keith Lenihan from Keith Lenihan Motors and Dundalk, and also from Kieran Layden from BG Products Ireland. Kieran, thanks very much for coming up. Keith, thanks for turning up as well. Keith wouldn't answer the phone today.
It's not that my phone wouldn't actually work.
Yeah.
Chat itself. I wanted a better description.
Yeah, I was nearly to go down to Keith's house to knock the door, see where
Sure,
are you?
I was here before you.
And he was sitting there. Anyway, we were planning on going through some of Kieran's products, and we started off with the engine performance restore, which is the EPR. Some people know it as engine flush. It is typically an engine cleaner, and we got sidetracked and everything on it because it covers so much. So we decided, look, let's do an episode on just the product. So we do have a lot of people coming onto our social media asking us, when do you use this? What do you use in this situation? Not all your products, Kieran, but the core products that we use here at McEwen Auto Service, and Keith, you use the same as well. So we're going to start off quickly on the EPR now and say we've spoke for 20 minutes in our last episode on EPR, but typically this goes into your engine when it's hot.
Heat is pretty much, if you're changing oil, you want the oil to be hot. Yeah. You know, the ingredients in this product are primarily, activated when the heat is up in the car. It's going to do its job in a short time frame, and effectively cleaner engines work better, but especially for the newer engines with low tension piston rings, which we covered before, they're prone to picking up that carbon and sticking. And we're seeing an awful lot of oil evaporation and loss of engine oil, and especially with the thinner oils that are in the market, this product really limits that. So, most of the cars that come to your garage in the morning are hot anyway. Yeah. That's the time to put it in. In a lot of garages we work with now, like in the likes of your garages, it's not even offered to the customer anymore. It's part of the service. So
we've actually torn that in its head. So just to finish your saying, some people say, I can't spend another 20 minutes on the car waiting for this to warm up. Well, as soon as the cars dropped off, go out and put them in. We had 5 cars here yesterday. Sorry, not yesterday, Friday. On Thursday we had 5 cars. And I went out first thing in the morning, the cars were all hot, put bum, 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 bum. I did a wee video with them on it. That was it. And by the time, and I just went around after half an hour and just switched them all off. And by the time the car came into the mechanic to get the services done, this was done. Yeah. And as well as that, and the other thing you said, it's no longer optional on a service. We had a customer come in here a few weeks ago, and he travelled up from Mullingar. He likes what we do. He's seen our social media stuff online. He says, no, I want to go to Sean. And the only question we were asked is, can you update my online service history with Audi? And he says, of course we can. It's not an issue. We're connected with Audi. We're connected with all the German brands for online service updates. Came up, and I says, right, look, we have the EPR and the DOC. We're sending this as a kit. No, I don't want any additives. Well, hang on a minute. He says, I'm not being cheeky, but if this is going in anyway, if you don't want it, we're not the garage for you. We just went to hand the key back. And he was sort of took back. He said, what? I was like, look, it's not that it's a hard sell. This is how we do things here. We want to do the job right. You've travelled here because you want it done right.
Yeah, that's a mentality, and that's a professional outlook. It not only protects the garage, it protects the work that you're doing. Like, the last thing that you want is him to drive back down to Mullingar and have an issue in a month's time with evaporation of oil or loss of engine oil or the oil light coming on or the pressure switch coming on. You're protecting the work that you're doing by doing a simple service like EPR. And like you say, if it's a well-run garage, it becomes the norm. I find that the garages that implement that service on every service are the ones that hard sell is gone, because turnover of staff as well in a garage, the hard sell, trying to upsell to customers, that's all eliminated and gone. There are plenty of other products that we move into that you are going, well, this is best practice and this is why we recommend it. And because of the engine that you have, this is why we recommend this, whether it's a GDI engine, whether it's a car with a DPF, whether it's a car with a wet belt. I think that there's...
It's safe to use and all applications.
Yeah, exactly.
We have in the back here GDI, GPF, DPF and hybrid electric vehicle, and other things that aren't mentioned, as you say, as wet belt. So it's safe to use in everything, and frankly should be used in everything.
Yeah.
But again, if anyone watched the last podcast, you see that I spoke to, we initially used it to fix a problem.
Yeah.
It did fix it, but from visiting the BG factory and talking to the guys and the scientists in the lab that developed the product, it's a preventive maintenance product. You use it at every service, not when you have a problem. Keep your engine clean. We have this conversation daily, and one of the things that sort of takes up a lot of my time is explaining things to customers. You're sitting there going to explain why your timing chain is gone, why it hasn't been lubricated, and what could have prevented it. Done.
Yes. Yeah.
So that's that product. I say we could say we
I know,
could spend
I know.
all day going on about them, but we'll keep moving on. When so basically you're putting your EPR in, your engine's been hot, you got up to temperature, it doesn't need to sit in for hours, you say it evaporates off, it's done its job, it's cleaned the carbon, it hasn't broken it up, it's dissolved the carbon deposits.
Yeah, I think one of the things, just to touch on briefly with that, is you know, cleaners that don't have the R&D behind them, that don't have the, you know, the labs and the research and development. You know, what BG have is 80 people working in that environment on a daily basis. Everything is tested to within an inch of its life, you know, with manufacturers, with all the OEMs, and with all their own stuff. So, you know, one of the main things that they really worked on was, you know, the chemical structure of the product, how the ingredients actually worked. It's designed to liquidize. You know, older type products that people would have put in engines would have, you know, in some cases could have blocked pickup strainers and stuff like that.
Yeah.
This product is not designed for that, and doesn't really do that. You know, it liquidizes, and you'll see it. One of the comments that we get by an awful lot of garages is, you know, geez, the dipstick was so much cleaner when I used the product, or I couldn't believe the shit that came out of the engine when we used the product. And I'm kind of going, well, what did you actually use it on? And you know, we get a lot of calls from garages, you know, that wouldn't typically go through as much EPR as you would kind of go, well, how much oil did you go through this month? Well, I went through 2 barrels, Kieran. And you go, but you only used half a case of EPR. Oh yeah, well, we only use it on the bad engines. And I'm going, oh no. He goes, oh, but it works great, Kieran. You know, and you're kind of going, well,
don't let the engines get bad.
no, it's not the idea. There's a different product for that. You know, there's a product for heavier sludge which was developed for the likes of Volkswagen, and it was licensed for them, and that was predominantly for sludge. We're using that a lot on the likes of the engines that might have had damage done to the wet belts, and the compression rings are stuck, you know, and they're using a lot of oil. We use the dynamic engine clean on that. It's what we would call a kind of a control-alt-delete on an engine. Yeah. So there are different type products. This is not the product to use in engines that are heavily sludged. Yeah. So I think good garages kind of get that on. And another one of the ones as well is we don't use it on every service. We use it on every second service. So it's kind of like saying, I'm going to get really dirty. If you look at a kid and they go out in a rugby pitch or a GAA pitch or whatever pitch it is, and they're sliding around in the muck and they're doing their tackles, and, you know, they come home and they're dirty, they have a shower. But if they go out and play another match and they get twice as dirty, it's twice as hard to clean that dirt off them. Yeah. So, you know, using it on every second service, you're only getting half the benefit. It's going to do benefit, but it's not going to do the benefit you really want. So I can't make people use it. You know, it's up to them as a garage, and, you know, it's up to them to decide what they want to do themselves, you know.
Okay, so secondly, after your engine is cleaned out, we've dropped the oil out, we put in our new oil filter, put in the bung, fill the engine up with oil. What's next?
We have DOC, which is for diesel engines, and we have MOA, which is for petrol engines. And there are fundamental differences between them. A lot of people would ask us, including I think Yuki, you know, why do I need to put this in if I'm using a good engine oil? Well, because of the drain intervals, and because of the stop-start journey, and because of the newer technology, if everybody was servicing their car on 6,000 to 10,000 kilometers, I think, yeah, look, you'll get away with it. But I think where the OEMs brought the service intervals, you're kind of playing catch up with a lot of these things. These products can be added safely to any quality engine oil, and it's going to boost that by nearly a quarter. But on top of that, it's going to reduce the sulfated ash and the blockages on DPS by up to 65%, because you're going to have the cleaner rings, you're going to have the better compression. This one here, one of the things in an engine oil, without getting overly technical, there are different things. You've got your calcium sulfonates, you've got your magnesiums, you've got your sulfated ash. All of these things do and provide a function in an engine oil. And ultimately, it's protection, it's dispersants, it's cleaning, it's a lot of things. But the residual amount of those, it neutralizes against acids. And acids is one of the big ones, because when the acid builds up, it's oxidizing the oil and oxygen gets in. But also on the breather system on the car, you're going to have a lot more residual oil, and that's what's blocking the DPF. So if you use these products, especially the diesel product, one of the things that's happening in a diesel engine, and if you look on YouTube at any oil company that's kind of talking about diesel and everything else, they'll talk about, how abrasive soot is. And in a diesel engine, so the DOC, one of its primary functions is to neutralize the acids, but also soot control. That's why you might see an oil that's that bit darker coming out of an engine when you've been using DOC. It's not dirtier, it's just that bit darker because of the soot control that's in it. And that's one of the advantages. If you mix these up and you put DOC into a petrol engine, you're not going to get the same benefits, because they're different, and they're different style additives. So it's not going to do what it's supposed to do, but it's not going to do any harm.
One of the things we mentioned when we spoke about Carshall oils is about, no matter where you go, wherever there's friction, Carshall has been there. Whether it be the roller door, your garage, the hinges in your door, Carshall have been with research and development along that line of everything. Electric wind turbines, anywhere there's friction, they're there. And one of the things is the demands are constantly changing of these products. Even when we talk to wind turbine, whatever you're talking about, with newer technology creates newer demands. The thing about the DOC or your engine oil, especially, not so much, fair enough, in your petrols, you're going to have things like ethanol added to the fuel now that you never had before. But in diesel, especially in Ireland, we have, if you look at the fillers now, it's either B7 or B10. So that means it's either 7% or 10% biodiesel added to it.
7%, I think, at the moment.
Mostly 7,
I think
they're going for the 10.
they are going for the 10, and it's going to go higher. It's going to go, B20, and this is causing havoc. No different to Castrol. R&D, manufacturing. BG are ISO manufacturing, ISO on their labs, ISO on their distribution and packaging. They're ISO standards in pretty much, which is the highest standard, but they're also sit on the ASTM, which is the Automotive Society for Testing Materials, which you'll often see on specification sheets, which are your DIN specs, which is the Deutsche spec. R&D and the technology that goes into the products and the friction that's there, products are constantly changing, which is why BG have a full lab and research and development. These products, when I started, weren't fully synthetic. They're fully synthetic now. They're API approved. There's nothing in these products that's not already in the oil, just more of the good stuff that is designed to mix with what's there. But what we found is the higher the quality of the oil, the more performance boost you got. So, that's why we kind of pound, the message of higher quality, better results. We want to be associated with the garages that are getting better results, that are having less problems. That's pretty much our goal. Like, I don't want to be associated with, sludge, broken engines, the can that, Jesus, that can is brilliant, it fixed my broken. it didn't fix your broken. It put a Band-Aid on it for when it actually does break. You know, BG blew up my engine. You know, this is the big one. So it's the problem is that the OEMs have, you know, and this isn't slating OEMs. It's just what sells cars was, you know, you sell a car, and Keith, you're into car sales. What people love to hear is, here's the keys to your shiny new car. Now, you don't need to get it serviced. You can drive away your grand maintenance. Jesus, maintenance is next to nothing. So what they did was they got service packs. And when you're buying a car, so if you get approved for your finance of 50 grand, sure, throw in another 2 grand on top of it, you got 50, you may as well get 52, and that's all your service costs done. And the garages win massively in their service plans, because we know in the service plans it's an oil and filter.
But the problem with there's not even in some cases, because Gary used to work here. Gary had a Kia Optima, and he bought it brand new, and he bought it with a service pack, and that was all right. So he was working, even though he's working here, the Kia garage collected the car from here, brought it was great service in fairness to them, brought the car back, done the first service, but we're back within an hour. And Gary goes, it didn't take longer than that. What's when you plug in? It was 15,000 kilometers, nothing. Yeah, first service and service packs of plug in. And he was right. And he didn't care, because he was going to he was every 3 years he was going to get a new one anyway. But when he went to trade in 3 years' time, the salesman he says he actually was going mad. He's like, you never get this thing serviced. Gary, I did get it serviced. I got it serviced on time, and as part of your service pack. He says, there's only one oil change in it. Well, that's
Your service
the service pack.
Yeah.
So even the people selling the service pack didn't even realise how poor the service pack was. And I'm sure that's changed now, because we all know there was issues with.
Well, look at it. I think, you know, I know we're talking about products, but we're talking about cars. And Keith, you're in the city, and you're selling cars, and you sell a lot of cars in the city. And I think that because you're also not just selling cars, but you've got a full working garage whereby you're servicing customers' cars, and have been for a while, you see both sides of it. You know, people go in and they're buying a car and they don't understand. They're buying a diesel based on fuel efficiency, or the neighbour said, Jesus, I have a diesel and it's great. And the government, don't forget, turned around to everyone and said, buy diesel. Everybody went out and bought diesel. Then they said, oh, diesel's terrible. We need to go back, and we need to go hybrid electric and everything else. So they've changed their tune when they were the actual people that devalued the cars by doing what they did. So people were driving around in diesels, and they were completely devalued, because they were told, oh no, diesel's terrible now. You don't want diesel. So in selling cars is one thing. People, you know, the education of the salespeople selling the car. Well, what car is right for that customer, whether it's a hybrid.
The other thing is as well, though, with the car sales, like, because I sold cars for years, as you know, and a fella comes in and wants to look at whatever car is going, be it a Kia, a Nissan, a BMW, whatever it is, you'll show them the fancy alloy wheels, you'll show them the nice colour, you'll show them the sunroof, you know, even a used car, you'll show them the low mileage. You're not going to stop and say, hey, hang on, and by the way, you need to service this thing every 15,000 kilometers, and it has a DPF, and the DPF is 2.5 grand to replace. Like,
You have to go for a wee spin every 2 days.
touch on the negatives.
Yeah.
I think it has changed. We particularly now in the showroom, because obviously it's my own place. That's I just won't sell if I'm selling a car for a customer. The customer needs to be qualified as to their needs. There's no point in selling it. I've said it loads of times on this podcast. But you know that you're not going to get a fella in a showroom. Now there is loads of dealers selling cars quick, you know, but
Yeah.
generally speaking, when a customer comes in, you don't want to bring negative into the sale. And unfortunately,
Well, I
it
think
has the servicing DPS not as good.
Well,
you know.
I think the knowledge on DPFs and the after treatment devices, it was new technology, you know, that went in, and it was done in a hurry to reach standards. And I don't think it's fair to turn around and say, oh, well, it's the car guys, you know, and the OEMs, you know, it's the sales guys' fault. They were doing what they were told, you know, by and large, and they sold cars. No one knew that it was such a nightmare, you know, and how the difference in technology affected the car in lots of different ways.
Well, when the DPF was released, was 07, kind of 08.
Yeah.
And that's when I was off the tools, and I was on the showroom floor at that point. And then obviously subsequently went back on the tools and had to learn DPS. But there was no, this is a DPF, and this is what it is. You were just
There's a sticker on the window.
Yeah.
Take it for a drive. The light comes on.
So we weren't, and with and that was all certified training for sales, like, and there was no mention of DPF. The technical guys might have got it, but we didn't. Know what it says. Because since I've gone back in my tails now, we switched.
We know all about them.
But I even remember back when we were selling oil and low sap oil came out, and we might have been selling oil at €2 a litre or €3 a litre or whatever it might be. And I remember going to a garage and he asked me about this low sap oil, and I went off back and I said, what's this low sap all about? And had to educate myself on everything else. And I went, geez, so they need this new oil. Oil isn't oil anymore, it's a different oil. That's €8.50 a litre. I was like, oh, it's like, so it was mental back then, because there were garages that ended up jumping a lot quicker than other people, because they were ahead of the curve.
That was 17 or 18 years ago.
Yeah, and it was mental. So, when it came in, what people realised very quick was, the oils were different, but it took a lot longer. There were people still putting 1040, I'm sure, into cars with DPFs and wondering why they were blocking, and it was a nightmare at the start. I think it has progressively, like, there's not many garages that I go into now that are not using the right oils, really, as in, low sap oils.
And to finish up on that, one of the things, again, we spoke about with Castrol was, and Simon had pointed out, that was a great point, you just mentioned DPFs there again, and when a car is regenerated, this happens typically. So everyone resonate with this. You get an older car, you're always topping the oil up. Oil sales, 1 litre cans were a big seller with older cars, because they always need topped up. Every engine burns oil. Anything that uses lubrication burns it. That's it. It's a given. So you come along with a car with GPFs and DPFs, and all of a sudden there's regeneration processes. That happens through what's called post-ignition. Piston comes up on its compression stroke. Fuel goes in at the top. Boom. Down the piston goes in its power stroke. But in a regeneration, as you know, it sends a second spray down, your post-ignition. And that's to redden the mixture, to get it hot, to heat the DPF regeneration. But the problem is some of that fuel gets down past the side of the piston. And that happens. It's just a thing. It's not that there's anything broken. It just happens. So that fuel now gets into the oil. And then all of a sudden, then your oil is turned acidic. And one of the things, and this is what we wanted to get to, what Simon mentioned, this is why I brought up the biodiesel. And we have HVO coming in.
It's already in, yeah.
I'm not going to talk about it because I don't know enough about it. But all I do know is what Simon mentioned was that your biodiesel, typically, if anyone's working on engines, they'll know about the breather system and the way the top of your rocket cover, there generally is a pipe going back to the air filter or the air intake. And that's to bring any fuel that evaporates up out of the oil, goes up, rises up, and goes out and is burnt in. But the problem with, anyone that has a Volkswagen knows this, because they usually have an oil temperature gauge as you flick down through the dash. The oil temperature gauge never goes up over 110 degrees. You know what I mean? 115 if there's something wrong with your engine. Biodiesel does not evaporate until it hits 200 degrees. So if you're driving round and round and round, and your biodiesel, and you're getting biodiesel, if you're buying diesel, the government have stuck it in there, tough, it's there, there's nothing you can do about it. As that gets down past your rings, you'll see it in Mazdas. Mazdas have a low fill, max fill, and then an X above it. And that's because every regeneration, there's that much diesel getting past the pistons that's not getting burned out of the car, that they actually can cause hydraulic lock. It's dangerous to the car. Not only that, your car, anyone that takes a DPF out of the car will notice that, now my car is burning oil. It's not burning oil. It was always burning oil. But there was that much regeneration going on, that there was that much diesel going into your oil. It was topping up with diesel. So come service time, you don't have 5 litres of oil.
Product in the diesel care, and then how does that that obviously it's going to help with diluted fuel, or diluted oil, should I say?
The acidity of it.
Yeah, well, just to touch on what Sean said about biodiesels, and it is a problem. It's going to be an even bigger problem when we go full HVO, and there are certain truck companies that are gone full HVO. So what you have is you've got a vegetable stock. That's what hydrotreated vegetable oil is. It's a vegetable stock. Biodiesel is a vegetable stock, whether it's rapeseed oil or whatever else. And what happens is that you've got a vegetable stock and you've got a petroleum. So two different type, and it goes back to the soluble, non-soluble argument. So one of them will not evaporate. If you have a petroleum product, which we have at the moment, you know, going into a petroleum product, you have that evaporation. Whereas if you have a non-petroleum product going in, it won't evaporate, and it's going to cause for much sooner oil changes, and that hasn't been discussed. Also, the deposits on that are nasty enough, so it's going to be even more focused on oil changes. Which the problem is that, you know, we're still keeping oil change service intervals long, and that's going to have to be rectified. But how does DOC really neutralize everything? The ingredients that are already in the oil, your calciums, your magnesiums, their job is to reduce the acidity inside the system. But when they get depleted and worn down, they can't.
Am I right in saying that happened at about 10 to 12,000 kilometers in Mo?
And sooner, depending on how clean that engine was, depending on when we went back to talking about this one, how clean the engine was prior to the new oil going in. If the new oil has to go in and clean the engine and do its job, you're depleting those additive packs much quicker. So the cleaner the engine to begin with, putting the oil in, that's crucial, which is why this one, every service. So it's a cleaner engine. So the oil that you're putting in, it's going to do a better job. DOC is adding to the oil additive pack that you already have in there. So it's fighting against the acidity, but also in the reduction that's coming through the breather system. By reducing the amount of pressure that's building up in the crankcase, you're going to have less going through the breather system. And that's why you'll see the DPF emblem on the DOC. People go, well, why is there a DPF emblem on your oil product? Because that's what's reducing what's coming around. And when we were in BG, I think you were talking to the guys there when they were talking about the reduction in ash and after treatments. 65% is what they have. Now, they say that, and that kind of moves you on to the next one with the trilogy. So the trilogy is also...
You call it trilogies. Tommy calls it the three amigos.
Yeah.
Tommy, we met Tommy Garcia, an absolute gentleman. He's from... no, it's not. It's Paul Garcia.
Paul Garcia.
Paul Garcia. Tommy's going to kill me for getting a second name now. Because he watches these. So, what the BG code, when I went in and when we sat in there, we got the opportunity to visit the BG factory, not only the factory, the R&D, the labs, the management facility, the production facility, and the distribution facility. We've seen it all. And one of the things I want to go and say, what have we got for DPFs? What have we got for DPFs? Because every customer claims DPFs. And I've said this before, that the guys are saying, why do you want something with DPFs? I goes, because Ireland's full of problems with DPFs. He said, well, so is America, but your customers that come to you regularly, are they having problems? I'm like, actually, no. And Debbie was standing beside me. She said, no, actually, your own customers, that anyone who comes with a DPF issue is a new customer. Or there's something wrong with their car and being intercooler hose or something like that gone. If it's a case that it's something, I mean, it's anyone that comes all the time for the regular service and doesn't have DPF issues. So they said that's tributed to having a clean engine. And they told us then, they showed us that they took an old engine out of a scrapyard, put it onto a dyno, ran the thing. They have a tune that they can do real world testing or mimic real world sort of conditions on an engine. And they showed the service what they call the three amigos, which brings in the fuel system treatment as well, which cleans, that's for your petrol, and the 245 for your diesel. Remember, I used to ring you every 5 minutes. Which one's which? Which one's which? To torture them. So, what? I know. You want to?
I love that.
It actually says diesel fuel system, and I'd still ring him and ask him questions. Cheers, Keith. Sorry, not sorry.
Here for we'll be back on in the making mistake.
Flex again.
So the guys in yeah, Kieran calls the trilogy, right? Whether it be petrol or diesel, the three amigos, as Tommy calls it. And what you're doing there, you're cleaning your engine, you're protecting your engine, but you're also cleaning your fuel system. But 65% less particulate emissions coming out of the exhaust after using these, and that's why we don't have problems with DPFs, because we're keeping our engines clean. And this is also why it's preventative maintenance product. You're preventing the stuff getting to the exhaust in the first place. And this is why this has worked so well for us.
Well, look, it's like everything. Clean engine is one thing, and there are two products that we really recommend for your clean engine and maintaining a clean engine. But a clean engine with a dirty fuel system, you're already in trouble, because no matter how much additive you have, if you've got a leaky injector, or an injector that's straight lining and overheating the side of the piston, or whatever it is, it's just not going to function the way it's supposed to, and it's going to contaminate the oil that's in the car. So you're going to be, fighting against it straight away. So clean engine, clean fuel system, happier car. And it's why we recommend that you do both. Look, we've got some garages that only use the engine products. They don't use the fuel products until they have a problem, and then we've got people who just use the fuel products when they have a problem. But when used together, the three of those on every service, the customers that do that, and we have a lot of customers that use the 3 cans pretty much religiously on every service, they don't have problems. They don't have the problems that the garage down the road has, or the town down the road.
It's fair to say, if you're using the oil, that's cleaning the bottom half of your engine and your piston rings. And then if your injection system, then obviously that's coming in, that's cleaning the top half. So
It's clean top of your piston as well.
Piston, you got that swirl on the piston when
you've
it's
told me
going in.
something before where, and we've all seen it with diesel engines, with a carbon build-up on the piston. And by not using the product, and in fairness, that actually changes the swirl chamber and the combustion.
It not only changes swirl chamber, but we had an issue here with the Renault. You were here the day we done the intake clean out.
Yes.
So, and we've seen a few times, like, what's that? We tapping noise in the van. Like, we couldn't put our finger on it. And it was the van belonged to a milkman. It was carbon top of the piston, right? It was starting to hit the valves. And that's, people have to remember, like, this is why time is so crucial. And no one sees the inside of their engine. So time is so crucial, because with an interference engine, when your valve's open, if that piston goes up, if them valves aren't closed, bang, smash. Its engine's ruined. So the issue you have there is, because the tolerances are so small, they're so finite. If you get enough carbon built up on top of that piston, that's what we were hearing. We were hearing the carbon hitting the top, hitting the head.
Chris Nolan said the same thing, and I think he on the previous podcast, and he had the Skoda that was severely misfiring and shaking on cold start. And we've seen a lot of this over the last while, especially with the likes of Volkswagen specialists, whereby they're high pressure common rail systems. And with high pressure common rail, one of the most common things is heat. And the heat and the tolerance levels have been reduced so much. It's no different than the likes of your engine oils, going down in the viscosity and the technology we put in. But with the heat in the cylinder and the high pressure common rail unit, they build up carbon much quicker. And we're seeing this in the heavy duty sector, in the agricultural sector, across the board. All the trucks are suffering with the same thing, but in bigger systems. So the cleaner you can keep those injectors spraying the right way, any diesel injection company will tell you, keep the injectors clean. Your car is going to work better. And that's why, the three together are better, but it does add cost to a service. Like, you're in a tough area, where you are, and
And we haven't just implemented whereby the customer gets it. It's offered.
yes,
And now most people do go that. And in fairness, anyone that has, like, we're using you now maybe 2 or 3 years or so. But anyone that does get it, what we find is, do whatever you done the last time.
Yeah.
And we do hear that, and it's great to hear that coming from you guys who are using the product on a daily basis. But we hear from a lot of people, whereby, especially that guy down in the Midlands that was afraid of using the EPR for a long time until his son started using it, and he went, the difference in the engine, get me down some.
Can I just touch on that one then? You see, so that's obviously diesel and what it does. Now, this is petrol then. So this...
That doesn't say petrol on the can.
Yeah, but that one says diesel, so...
So,
It's the same raw material.
But this now, obviously, petrols have catalytic inverters.
Yes.
And they're obviously different fuel systems. Biodiesel. So what's the deal with this one then? Just so we
Same
for the viewers. Right?
for the viewers to know the difference, and we get it often where people mix them up. It's okay, Sean, you're not alone. The raw material in them, as in like the detergent, is polyethylene, and it's got a high proportion in it. The difference really between them is the diesel product will have cetane in it as well, and it'll also have a pump lubricant in it as well because of the ultra low sulfur diesel that we have. So when you have ultra low sulfur diesel, you are stripping some of the lubricity that's in it. You used to hear people putting in 2-stroke oil and everything else into the diesel just to lubricate the pump. That has it in it.
It's not BPF friendly though, that's the thing.
Which?
The 2-stroke oil.
Yeah. Whereas
but this is.
Yeah, 100%. And the cetane as well helps. That's why in a Volkswagen, people will put it in and go, your product is brilliant. It works straight away. Well, it hasn't worked straight away. What's worked straight away is the cetane has worked straight away while the detergent is working. And we would have a high level of detergent. So while the cetane softens the injectors and levels it out, it gives it time for the detergent to work. So both of these products are designed to work on roughly 70 litres of product. If you have less, that's fine. But a full tank is a full tank of cleaning. You often get people with this one here and they go,
Put it in with a quarter of a tank.
Put it in when they have a quarter of a tank, they're not going to get the full benefit. They will get benefit, but not the full benefit.
That can solve a couple of issues for us in terms of like an emissions failure on an NCT.
COs and everything else.
So in fairness, you put that in, drive it overnight, bring it back in, and like if it won't pass, the readings will have definitely came down.
Yeah, so more driving, more cleaning with the products. You've got to give the cleaner the time. There are other type products that you put in, that say for instance you want to kind of have smoke and mirrors and a fast result. Everybody countrywide all knows, oh yeah, sure, I throw in a litre of petrol into the diesel. That's been well done, but you're not
doesn't
doing
work anymore now though.
No, but you're just damaging systems.
Don't start another one.
We're very racist.
I think if you just use them as the way that they're designed, there are different products. Like we do a lot of the neat product, especially in the heavy duty sector and agricultural sector, where we're running product neat on the injectors. It's a different type of product. It's different chemistry. It's designed differently. This is designed for in the tank. So, preventative maintenance in the tank. If you're putting it into fuel filters, I don't mind because it ends up back in the tank anyway, in a high pressure common rail. So it makes no odds. You're still getting the benefit, but fill up the tank, you'll get the full benefit. So that's they're the main products.
It's just on that, just filling up the tank, because I've had this debate myself, just purely with myself, because you'd be thinking a half tank is more concentrated, more concentrated.
Yeah.
You get a better clean.
Yeah.
Or a quicker clean. And I've often said it. No, I'm not going to lie to you. Sometimes I would make sure it's a half tank and I'd be able to.
Yeah.
But because you would think that if you 70 litres of fuel and you put that in, like a can that size in, like dilute to bits. Whereas if you put it into a quarter of the tank, you're getting more.
Look at Keith. It's horses for courses. I think the fact that they manufacture.
How big's your rattle?
Yeah. The R&D. If they felt the results would have been better on 50 litres or 20 litres or whatever it is, they would advise that. That's why they have different style products. No different to the diesel product that's run neat on the injectors. There's a petrol system for running neat on product. That's one of the products that they do with Ford, where it's run neat on the injectors, where they do an injector clean out.
That's in Eric, isn't it?
Yeah.
But there's more, they give a different fuel. I know they have a lot more issues with their fuel over there. So just on the DOC, not the DOC, the 245. One of the things I'd just like to point out before we move on to our last product is
That one says diesel.
It's always good to know, folks. It's on the can. It's not in this one, it's in this one. If it doesn't say diesel on this petrol, if it says diesel, it's for diesel. All right? No, with the 245, we used to use this, again, before we were using it properly, we used to use this as a fix. So if someone come in and their injectors were rattly, and we would be, I love looking at live data on a car. I love looking at DPF, differential pressures and things like that. When I'm doing a full service means a full service. I want to see the complete story of the car. So I'm checking out your DPF, differential pressure, and making sure it's within a figure that I'm happy with. I'm also looking at your cylinder injector deviations, things like that, or cylinder adjustments. And one of the things with the 245, we used to say, right, well, look, your injectors are out, they're outside parameters, you're a bit smoky. Ideally, you need a set of injectors. We'll try this, pour this into it, and a lot of the time it did work. But again, you're selling this then as a fix, where it's not designed to be a fix, it's designed to be a preventive maintenance product. And if you use it all the time, your injectors theoretically should last a lot longer.
Actually, for example, that there was one last week. There was an 8 that he was in about 4 or 5 weeks. He'll come in, one on rough in the mornings and stuff, cut the fuel treatment in. He's a really good customer that he wouldn't let him ring you back. He'll not only ring you back when there's a problem, he'll ring you back to tell you that. He said, look, Keith, that's after wonders. We got about 3 months out of it though, and it came in only last week, and I think it was a similar issue to what you done a video on. There was a black DPF, yoke was running terrible, but it turned out that the injectors were, it sorted it out for a period of time. It didn't sort it out forever, and that's again one of the reasons for that was because he wouldn't take the additives when we were offering to him.
That's a really good example of, putting a band-aid on it and using product to fix the problem. You might get a little bit of time. It might fix it full time.
Loads of them for this particular one, and I was surprised, honestly, because it's been that good for us. I was surprised to see this one back, but then when we took the injectors out and had them tested, the pictures that we found, I'll show you afterwards, they were all the lacquering is what your man inside the injectors to destroy.
And you will get that, and you won't magic back metal or scored injectors or anything like that. So I think people have to be realistic with regards what they want to achieve out of it, and it all comes back to what we're banging the drum about, is if you look after your customers as best you can, you can drag a horse to water, you can't make them drink, but by and large, I think through education of what's actually going on in the car, what systems are in the car, what we recommend. Like, you have Keith Lenihan Motors on your shirt. Like, you are the advice network for them. You're looking after their car. There's got to be trust between
the time, the savage amount of time. Like, if you have a customer that comes in and you're selling these products correctly, you could spend 10 minutes talking to them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But look, at the end of the day, it's you're going to spend a lot more time.
That's exactly it.
Pricing a broken engine.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's trying to get the point across to them. But it's just to sell it right, you know what I mean?
Because at the initial one, and then after that, it's kind of go back to what you said. Whatever you did the last time, do it again. Yeah. And that's what we find with a lot of our customers now, is like it's just become the norm. It's what they do. They're doing, it's best practice for them. And look, it's great that they're doing it that way, because they have less problems. They don't, like, no one wants to strip an engine. No one wants pistons out and DPFs drilled, and no one wants that.
We don't even want it. The garages don't want it.
No one wants that. So I think they help the garage and they help the customer. Yes, there's a cost to doing the right job, but that's life. What do you want?
Great. So, Kieran, lastly, no, not lastly on your product list, but lastly, what we like to do is we like to offer our customers a BG service. And a full BG service for us is cleaning your engine, protecting your oil, cleaning your fuel system, whether it be diesel or petrol, but then offering a service for your coolant. There's been technical service bulletins sent out from BMW, from different manufacturers, about the coolant actually eating the aluminium elements of the coolant systems, the charge coolers, and then going in and creating hydraulic lock on certain engines, and all because the coolant's turning acidic. So, just quickly, super cool.
No different than your engine oil. Real simple analogy is a barrel of coolant is 80% monoethylene glycol. which is your freeze protection. You got 20%, which is your additive. That additive is what dies in a coolant system. The freeze protection never dies unless someone has a pinhole leak and they're putting water in and they're topping up with water and they're diluting it. But the freeze protection never dies. The additive is what dies in it. There has been a big change in antifreeze coolant, depends on what you want to call it, over the last while. And they're HOAT. So what we would have known was IAT coolant. Then you had OAT coolant. Now we have HOAT coolant. Now we have HOAT with silicon enhancements. And there's lots of different things, no different than oil. Coolants have developed, and people think, you know, we'll look at coolants with colors, green, blue, pink, purple, yellow, whatever it might be. Some of them might be the same. Some of them are different, but there are different additive packs in them. And one of the additives that we find that causes a lot of the trouble would be the likes of a silicate enhanced coolant. Silicates are the additive. They're brilliant on aluminium. You know, it's an aluminium protectant, but it's a salt. And they blend that into the antifreeze. So you buy your antifreeze, it's pink, it's in the antifreeze. Now you have silicate bags that are in the expansion bottles in some cars, and in some cars they're in the second skin, but the bags are to replenish the silicate that's in the antifreeze. You get garages taking the bag out and going, oh, that bag is a disaster, it's blocking up the whole system. But what they're doing is they're speeding up the decline of the additive pack in the antifreeze. Also,
You're fixing one problem but creating another.
Yeah, also what we find is you have people who are doing timing belts, and they're taking out 2.5 litres out of a system, where there's 6 litres in a system. So you've got half, which is a silicate enhanced antifreeze, and then they're putting in OAT because it's the same color. But even still, even if you put in the Volkswagen, call it, or your BMW silicate enhanced antifreeze, the additive pack that's in the remaining 5 litres in the car, 4 litres in the car, that's depleted. It's gone. And nobody is checking the acidity of antifreeze. So when you go into a garage, they'll check the freeze protection with a hydrometer, and they'll go, oh yeah, freeze protection, I've got my bubbles and they're where they're supposed to be.
-20, we're good.
Yeah, but nobody checks the acidity of an antifreeze. And the acidity of an antifreeze tells you where the additive pack is. If the additive has died, the acidity will go more acidic down. So
And
you've got a
pretty much-
pH
it's
scale.
It's going to attack the tolerance.
Well, that's dropping the silicate salts out, because the fluid becomes weak, it drops the salts out, and you start seeing that salt, sand-like substance all over. Actually, I was in Lars' garage there, and he has a coolant machine, and the coolant machine was stuffed up with sand, almost like grit. And when you take it out and you crumble it, it's silicate salts, just sand, you know, and that silicate that's breaking down, and it deposits and blocks heater matrix.
So what you're really doing is you're again, preventive maintenance.
Stopping it from happening.
Stop it happening. So it's fair to say, whether you're driving petrol or diesel, this kit is a pretty much great all-round kit. So Kieran, you do have an awful lot more products, but these are the main ones, the main sellers. And look, I'm sure, have a wee look at our YouTube channel, youtube.com/@McEwen and we have a full range of demonstrations that Kieran's give us. So thanks very much again, everyone, for taking time to watch this. We hope you found this educational or informative. And as always, Kieran, thank you. Keith, thanks for coming up, and we hope you enjoyed this. Thanks for watching.